While we are working with Next.js, actually we are writing in Fullstack, and as Fullstack developers, we should be able to work with databases. So in this video, I will try to teach you how you can connect to database in order to store information into it. I will go with MongoDB, which is really simple to work with. And the reason that I'm covering database in this course is that in the upcoming videos, for example, in the next video, I'm going to talk about authentication, and we kind of need this working with database. For example, I need a database to store users info, and for that video I'm going to reference this video as a pre-requirement, and let's jump into it. So first, to work with database, what you need is actually a database. You can either go with the online services. I believe MongoDB gives you a plan that you can connect to their database. They give you an instance of the database with some resources, limited resources for free. It's good for developers, but also you can install it locally on your machine. And the third option is to pull the Docker image on your local. I go with this option because I have the Docker installed on my machine, and what I need to do is just simply pull the image and run a container out of that image. To do so, first make sure that you have the Docker installed, and this is my Docker dashboard, as you can see. There are some images, but they are not MongoDB. What I have to do, I go to the hub.docker.com, and in here you can search for Mongo. And also, if you take a look in the homepage, you can see the Mongo here because it's a very popular database or image. You can see it on the first page. I click for this, and here all the documentation required to how to connect or run this Docker image is available. But also I have prepared the command that need to be run on your terminal to get the image and run the image on your local. So docker run -d --name mongodb -p, and then we specify the port. We are binding the port 27017 to the same port, and then the Docker image name. So let's run this. And since I have already done this, and I have this image locally on my machine, it just runs the image for me. So if I go back to the Docker dashboard, here you can see I have this MongoDB running, and it's listening to this port, and it's ready to be connected. And so there are other softwares that you can connect to this database. Actually, you have two options. You can connect via shell, or the other way around to just play with the database itself is by using some kind of UIs or dashboards that lets you to connect to this service that is running. And the one that I'm using is called Compass. It's kind of a UI. It gives you a UI that you can connect to databases, and to do so, what I have to do, first I have to connect. So I click on this plus button, and I will connect to the default port on the local. And also I can give this connection a name. For example, I give it local MongoDB, and then save and connect. Now I'm connected to this one. What I have to do now is to create a database, and inside database I can have different collections. And in the MongoDB, since it's a NoSQL database, we have collections, but in the relational database we have tables. They are kind of not same, but the concept is that we group and we store entities into collections here. For example, here first I will create a database by clicking this plus button, and then I specify a name. I would say web detailed. You can specify whatever you want here, that's fine. And a collection, also in this form, I can specify a collection. For example, I go with users collection. So I put the user's name here, and I press the create database button. Now it creates this database as well as the collection for me. And inside this collection, since it's empty, I'm going to put some data by pressing this add button, and then insert document. I'm going to create some documents. For example, here I can say name is Mohi, and let's say age is 37 as number, and insert. Also, yep. And I can also clone this document and create another one, maybe another name. All right, now I have two documents actually here in my collection. And now, from now on, I have to programmatically read this data and bring them on my form or on my page. And to do so, what we need in our source code, if I go to the code, you need something called driver in order to be able to connect to database via code. And the driver, maybe the official driver or the most popular one you can find is inside the npm.js. If I go to the browser in the first tab, I have already opened this one. So the name that the package name that we are going to work is MongoDB. You can simply install this package on your local. So basically it gives you the ability to connect to database and also to perform operations like CRUD operations, creating, reading, or modifying and deleting or updating the data into the database. It gives you all the functionalities as well as a lot of more functionalities by simply installing it in your project. I'm going to install it. Now if I go to this project, let me first stop, then run this npm I MongoDB. By the way, I believe the correct pronunciation is MongoDB instead of Mongo. We'll go with MongoDB from now on. Now it's installed. And if you take a look into the documentation again, they give you some kind of samples or sample codes that you can perform those operations. If I scroll down here, yeah, you can see how we can connect to database. Simply we specify the URL to find the database, and then we instantiate this Mongo client with that URL. And from now on, with this client, we can connect. Then we can get the collection, or actually the database. Then we get the collection out of that database, and with this collection, we can perform different operations. So let's do it. I will grab this part of the code, and I will go to my project now. And I'm going to create a folder here. I will call it database db like this, and then I will name it db.ts like this. And now I will put those codes for now. I will put them like this, and later I will refactor them. So I will import them from MongoDB and with the ECMAScript signature. And then the default port is fine here. You can also put this connection string, and it is better to put them in the environment variable. But for now, since I haven't taught you how to work with environment variable, we can go and hard code this. But later, the best practice is not putting hard coding this kind of information in the code. Then we are instantiating, and the database name is web detailed like this. Now it's ready to connect to database and to perform other operations. Let me paste them here. All right, and the collection name is actually users collection like this. Now if I take a look into the users collection, you can see different operations like delete or like dropping the collection, or find entities or documents. We can see update and other operations that we can perform. So for now, I will refactor a little bit this file because I want to make it reusable, and actually I want to make it a module so other users can import this collection and perform other operations. So for now, I will go with a function export function like get user collection. That sounds good, and I can grab these codes, put them here, and I can say export async function. And simply I can return like this. So this function is going to first connect and return this collection, but it's better to refactor the first part and this part because it's going to be shared between other collections as well. So I will cut them into another function, maybe export, or just a local function get db, and I will paste them here like this, and here I can return const db equal db. Sounds better, async db. So later if I will have some other like this, okay, some other collections, I can simply copy and say get, I don't know, black collection or whatever. But for now it sounds good. Now what I have to do, I have to just grab this collection and return some data. And to do so, I'm going to create some other services here. For example, I will go with a folder like services, and then user services ts. And then here I will say that I'm going to have a function that will return all the users for me. So first of all, I can define an interface, like interface or export interface user, and it will have ID, name, in our case age. I don't have password. Sounds good. Now export function like this sounds good, sounds perfect actually. Now from here I can import that db.ts file or this function, this collection, this function method actually. I can import it. So let's grab it, await, and then in here I have all those functionalities. I go with the find and then to array like this. Then I can return it. All right, so I can get rid of this and sounds good. Actually, I have to await like this. Now it's complaining about types, I believe, because in this function, yeah, in this collection, we are not. It's going to return this promise of type document, but we are expecting user. So I can actually remove and move this one to the data here, like this, or it's better to have a folder called _types. .ts, and I can put them here. And now if I go to db, here I can say the db.collection is going to return user, and I can import it. Actually, I have imported already. Sounds good. The same here. In here I can say this user is going to be imported from this file, and actually I prefer to call it user like this, user.ts or user.dto maybe. And now sounds good. All right, let's go back. Now this function is going to return a list of users. It's ready to go. On the page, I'm going to call this function. On the home page, I'm going to call, and actually I have to await it. Then const users is like this. Now I can render them on the page like this. I will use the copilot autocomplete, and I think something is missing here. Yep, it's closing div. Now it's ready to be actually run. npm run dev. Enter. I can refresh. All right, you can see now I could fetch those data from the database. Users, Mohi, and this. I can also put them on the same page, like user.age. And yeah, here we go. Also good to know that this user ID is not of type string, so it's better to convert it to something else. The thing that we are getting from the database is actually of type, the ID is of type object ID. You can import it from MongoDB, and also here you have to convert it to a string representation of this ID. Maybe to hex string is the proper one, because if we take a look into the database, here you can see those IDs are of type object ID, and this is the hexadecimal code that is a unique hash code of that representing the ID of that entity. Now I have converted it into a string, to hex string, and now let's try to perform some CRUD operations. I go first with the deletion functionality. So to be able to delete one, I will implement a component, maybe the delete user button like this. I have to implement it. So it will receive the user ID as a string, and by performing and by clicking on this delete button, it's going to delete this user ID from the database. I will implement this into the components. I will create a file, delete user button, export const delete user button. Let's use this autocomplete, and actually this is not the one that I'm expecting. The same here, maybe I can keep this confirmation. Sounds good. Now also I have to mark it as used client, because it's going to perform some operations or interactions on the client. And this one also sounds good. Text red, maybe border. All right, and then I can wrap this delete button with use callback. like this. User ID is the dependency. Okay, from here, what I have to do is by simply first implementing use server action. So I can create a server action folder here, server action, like this, and then I can say delete user.action.ts. And here, what we have to do, I have to export the function, export. Let me stop the project for a moment. So export const delete user action. Going to be an async job, and now here I have to get the database. So here I will get the collection first, and then I can perform the delete one. And delete one is getting a filter, so we can specify filters like an object, a simple JSON object. We can specify the user ID, and this user ID should be of type object ID, but we are sending string. We have to convert it by simply saying new object ID that comes from MongoDB. Now it's fine, and it's going to work as expected. This server action is going to be called from the client, so I will first decorate it with use server, because I don't want to to reveal this code into the clients, and simply by marking it as use server we can prevent it. But this function can be imported from the use client from a client side component that is decorated with use client. So here in this function I'm going to import the server action. And by the way, we have covered the server action in the previous videos in this course. Now I perform this deletion simply by calling the delete user action. I can also await it. And now let's try to run the project and see if it works. npm run dev. Let's refresh. I see a problem here. So on the page, I have to import this component by saying control space and then like this. Okay. So if I press the delete button, it gives a confirmation by pressing OK. It doesn't refresh automatically, but I can refresh it manually, and you see the user is gone. Also, I can take a look into the database by refreshing, and that user is deleted now. And so the same situation for adding and updating you can perform. For example, by adding, I can maybe add a user form here, a simple one, really simple one, because I don't want to put too much time for this one, because I'm going to cover this authentication by implementing a login and sign up form in the next video. But for now, let's say we will have this add user button, and it will just add a random username and ID to the database. I don't want to implement the form for now, so let's stop it here. Add user button, I will implement it. Add user button.tsx, export const add user button. I can simply say this add user will perform and click handle add user. And this one, export, we can say const handle add user. It should be wrapped with use callback. Actually, you can skip use callback because it's not going to be repeated and re-rendered a lot. And now I can perform this add user action. We don't have it, but I can maybe copy this one, add user action. And this is the name of this one as well. Insert one, and here I can simply say the name would be something, and the age would be, I don't know, math that floor.random, something like this. Okay, and this name is fine. Also, we don't need user ID as well as this one. So it's like complaining about something. It says that type number is not assignable of type age, because we have mentioned it here. It's of type number, but it's not true. So I have to change it from string to number actually. And now sounds better. Now it's complaining about the fact that we are missing ID. So I can simply say ID equal new object. ID, let me import it. And now sounds good. I can simply say this server action can be imported into the add user button like this and be called simply like this, await async. All right, let's import this and run it. Refresh. I'm getting an error. Let's see what's wrong. I think this add button should be use client. Yep, like this. So if I press the add button, let's see if it works, and there's no problem. If I go back to database, you can see, yep, it's working as expected. It generates some random ID for you. You don't need to generate this one by simply saying new object ID. It will produce it for you, but also new user with some random ID. Let's try to run it again by pressing this multiple times. Yep, if I refresh, you can see I have created multiple users, and if I refresh the page, we should be able to see them. Yeah, I can now delete them like this. Also an important point, because here, as long as we get a new request, we are creating an instance, we are connecting to the database, we are keep connecting and leaving the connection open, which is not the best practice. We have to somehow manage this part, unless we end up overwhelming the database and have at some point reached to that point that the database will not accept new connections. And I have to refactor this function a little, so we can cache actually, and we can connect only once. This is the thing that this function is returning, is a database or DB. I can somehow cache it, so I can say let DB be of type DB that comes from MongoDB, and I can set for now null, and then here I can cache it, DB equal this one, then I can return it. Now here if I check if there is no DB or there is no DB, we can go on the processor. Actually I can say if the DB has some value, I can simply escape. Otherwise I will go on and try to populate and then return it. This approach will give us the ability of connecting only once to the database as long as the application is running, and in the production environment, when you run the project, it will only run this function once and populate this value for you, and will be persisted. So it should work fine and as expected. Let's try to add some data. Here you can see it's working like before. So, perfect. That was it. See you in the next ones. And the next one would be about authentication and how we can implement sign-up, signing, and manage the users.